For 3 full years, a junior researcher worked under a mentor whose prestige offered both protection and opportunity. That same access allowed the mentor to absorb the researcher's work, publish it as his own, and stall the mentee's career. The cycle only broke when an anonymous tip reached the university integrity office. Professor Aldridge was a distinguished figure, widely published and respected across his field. On the surface, he was generous with his time, making junior researchers feel privileged to be selected for his guidance. Academic mentorship relies on high-trust exchanges. Mentees share their most vulnerable intellectual assets: early draft papers, raw datasets, and preliminary theoretical frameworks. It is standard practice to hand these ideas over to a senior researcher for review. This performative generosity creates a screen for extraction. The prestige of the mentor creates a power imbalance that keeps the researcher focused on approval, often blinding them to the theft until the work appears in a journal under someone else's name. This journal title page shows Professor Aldridge as the sole author of 2 major papers. The researcher who actually developed the frameworks was relegated to a microscopic mention in the acknowledgments at the very bottom of the page. These papers utilized specific theoretical models the researcher had shared in confidence. The mentor had lifted the structural core of the work, publishing the findings without offering co-author credit. When the researcher confronted him, the response wasn't a defense, it was silence. Professor Aldridge ended the mentorship immediately, marking the beginning of a professional deep freeze. In a hierarchical environment, a junior academic has few options when a senior figure stops speaking to them. This quiet withdrawal leaves the victim without an advocate, effectively making them invisible within their own department. The retaliation took the form of an invisible ceiling. Rather than using formal reprimands, the mentor used his standing to ensure that the researcher's career simply stopped moving forward. The mentor targeted 3 areas. Funding applications were ignored, recommendations were never written, and promised introductions vanished. Because this involved withholding support rather than active conflict, the isolation looked like bad luck to peers. The researcher appeared to be struggling rather than suppressed. This method of sabotage is effective because it forces the victim to internalize the failure. It is designed to make the junior researcher look responsible for their own lack of progress. Realizing that social influence couldn't be fought with more social influence, the researcher changed strategy. They moved away from departmental politics and toward the university's formal integrity procedures. They submitted an anonymous tip to the Research Integrity Office. Once the office requested a formal complaint to begin a full review, the researcher provided their name and a documented account of the theft. This timeline maps the digital artifacts investigators reviewed over 7 months. Email timestamps and document creation metadata established a clear chronological record of original authorship. These digital footprints provided a rigid timeline of creation that the institution's social influence couldn't rewrite or dismiss. Metadata provides a rigid chronological record. In an environment defined by subjective reputation, this data functions as a neutral standard that institutional power cannot dismiss. As the investigation proceeded, a pattern emerged. 3 other early career researchers recognized the details of the case and came forward with nearly identical accounts of their research being absorbed by Professor Aldridge. The multiple evidence trails made it impossible for the university to view the case as a single misunderstanding. The professor was cornered by the accumulation of digital proof from multiple sources. To avoid the public fallout of formal sanctions against a high-profile faculty member, the university moved quickly. They arranged for Professor Aldridge to enter an immediate, quiet retirement. This type of professional abuse relies on keeping the victims isolated. The structure collapses the moment those individuals are linked by a shared, documented paper trail. The tangible results appeared in the journals themselves. The papers were formally corrected to include the researcher's name, finally providing the co-author credit that had been withheld for years. With the influence of the mentor removed, the researcher's career began to move again. Funding was approved, and new professional introductions opened doors that had been closed for 3 years. Professional misconduct thrives on the assumption that the victim won't speak up, but actions leave a data trail, even when the person in power tries to obscure it. Save your drafts and keep your time-stamped records. Meticulous documentation and the endurance to follow slow institutional procedures are the primary means of ensuring the facts are ready when they are needed.